I want to tell you about the bizarre relationship that 80-year-old Donald Trump is in with his 34-year-old staffer, Natalie Harp. And I'm telling you this not because I'm, finding this kind of gossip interesting. There is a very real story here about how Donald Trump is the opposite in every way of what supposed right-wing conservative Christians should be supporting, and yet they support him anyway. So let me lay out what's going on, and then I'll kind of explain to you the connection to the conservative Christians. 34-year-old Natalie Harp is sort of Donald Trump's right-hand woman. She's part of this increasingly small group of inner circle people who have direct and constant access to Donald Trump. She has influence over him. Trump is clearly dependent on her. Now, a lot of what we're learning is from the new book from Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. It's called Regime Change, and it's about the second Trump term. And Donald Trump was actually caught bragging to other staffers, Natalie Harp loves me. She loves me as much as my wife and kids do, and she will never leave me. So this is sort of like pretty unhealthy language to be using about someone who, at the end of the day, is an employee of Donald Trump's. Now, Natalie used to be a TV anchor. Now she follows Trump around everywhere. She acquiesces to his every demand. She'll go and get Trump hats to hand out to people. She'll print stories from right-wing websites or print tweets that are positive about Trump and bring them to Trump to make him feel good. She reportedly is one of the people proposing a lot of the most whacked out things that Donald Trump posts to his Truth Social. Sometimes she's even kind of like drafting some of those posts, reportedly. And she also encouraged Donald Trump's makeover of the Oval Office, where he like covered more and more stuff in gold leaf and gold paint, which is a reminder that no matter how much money you have, you really can't buy class. But that was Natalie Harp's idea. And when Donald Trump was spending a lot of time in Florida at Mar-a-Lago, Natalie Harp would follow him around the golf course as he golfed, and she would read off of her phone positive tweets and news stories about him. So that's already pretty weird. As if everything I've told you so far isn't weird enough, she would also write Trump little love letters of a sort that she would scatter around Trump's personal spaces for him to find. And one of those letters from Natalie Harp to Trump said, "You are all that matters to me." Now, this is so wacky and weird that other Trump staffers agreed it was really strange. Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles, is quoted as saying about all of this, "Where am I?" And Secret Service considered Natalie Harp a potential danger to herself and to Trump, according to reporter Michael Wolff. Now, we do not have reason to believe, other than the fact that it's Trump, we have no specific evidence that Donald Trump is having a sexual or intimate relationship with Natalie Harp, although it sounds like certainly there's a level of intimacy there. But Trump started saying, Natalie is the only one who loves me as much as my wife and kids. All of you will go off and make money, but she will never leave me. Now that's really, really weird. But first, really quick, a word from our sponsor. One thing that drives me nuts about political media is how two outlets can cover the same story and make it feel like two different events took place, not because any of the facts have changed, but because the emphasis of the stories is different. This is why I use Ground News, because Ground News pulls together reporting from across the political spectrum, and you can compare the headlines side by side and see how different outlets are framing the exact same issue. You can look at the bias distribution. You can look at factuality ratings. You can see who owns the outlets behind the reporting, which makes it easier to separate the substance from the spin. For example, Trump's EPA recently decided to remove limits on those forever chemicals in drinking water. Ground News shows how outlets like PBS and Raw Story are getting it right, and right-wing outlets put this anti-Biden spin on it, or they just stay very vague to avoid implicating Donald Trump. Ground News also has a blind spot feed. This is for stories that are underreported by one side. And you can also get a personalized feed based on your interests. Go to ground.news/Pakman or scan my QR code to get 40% off the Ground News Vantage Plan. The link is in the description. Now back to the video. Let's get to what I believe is sort of the more relevant political story here. For decades, the religious right has told us character really matters, family values matter, sexual morality matters, humility matters. And in comes Donald Trump, who cheated on multiple wives, had children with multiple women, was connected to a porn star hush money scandal, was caught on tape saying you can grab him by the pussy. He doesn't go to church. He has no pastor. He claims to be religious as of becoming a political figure, but he doesn't go to church and doesn't have a pastor that he consults with or whatever. He has famously said he has never asked God for forgiveness. He's never said, I'm sorry. That's a different story. And now we have this incredible report about an 80-year-old president, emotionally dependent at minimum on a 34-year-old staffer who leaves him notes saying, you're all that matters to me. Imagine if this were a Democratic president. Fox News would be doing wall-to-wall coverage for months. They would call it inappropriate. They would question the influence of this 34-year-old. And they would go, who's really in charge here, Trump or the 34-year-old? They would question the marriage of the person. If it were a Democrat, they would question his judgment. Now, instead, Fox and the right-wing media ecosystem, silent, because these were never moral principles. I write in my first book, The Echo Machine, about how it's a waste of time to debate these moral principles with these people because they don't really care about them. They'll abandon them as soon as they were inconvenient. If they can wield them as political weapons or cudgels, cool. But then when they're inconvenient, they abandon them. And what is funny is that, I don't know if funny is the right word, but what's sort of ironic is that Trump really represents the opposite of everything the Bible says. The Bible warns against pride. It warns against vanity, against surrounding yourself with people who are constantly flattering you. And what we're learning is Trump is spending hours having positive stories and tweets read to him, printed out, surrounds himself with people whose jobs are basically telling him how awesome he is, and staffers are leaving him sweet nothings in notes around the office. So whatever is the full scope of this relationship with the 34-year-old that Donald Trump has, it is not the model of Christian humility that conservative evangelicals spent decades telling us we needed. And you need only go back to the 2016 Republican primary to realize that they never really cared about that. Because for all of Ted Cruz's faults, he at least is playing the role of the modest conservative Christian far better, or at least he was in 2016, than Donald Trump is. And what was initially a significant amount of support from the evangelical community for Ted Cruz in that primary, as soon as it became clear that Ted Cruz was not going to win, the evangelicals went for Trump. And so we knew a decade ago that all of these values claims were basically BS. But look at what is now going on with Trump and this 34-year-old, as he is clearly estranged from Melania and potentially even to some degree from some of his kids. And the conservative, supposedly conservative Christian community, the evangelicals, they still have a very high level of support for Trump. That's why it's just not worth wasting our time arguing with them.